So I'm pulling out the money. Well, what happens is I get caught in the bank. So these two sheriff deputies come up behind me and they handcuff me. And then a detective comes and he starts questioning me. But they're calling me Gary Sullivan. Like, they don't know who I am. And at this point, like, I know I'm already, the FBI is looking for me. The Secret Service is looking for me. I know the U.S. Marshals are looking for me, right? So like but they're calling me Gary Sullivan. So I realize they don't understand and what happened, who I am. And of course I've got a driver's license, Gary Sullivan. So they're saying arrest him. I convinced the detective that I haven't done anything wrong, that it's very possible that the loan officers at the bank may have committed some kind of fraud, but I certainly didn't. He ends up letting me follow him back to the police station. I fill out a police report and he lets me go.
Welcome back to the Invest in Yourself podcast. Today I'm joined by a former criminal mastermind named Matthew Cox. Matthew was a con man who pulled off many high-dollar scams such as mortgage fraud, bank fraud, and identity theft. He ended up going on the run as well when things went south and the cops were looking to arrest him. The FBI ended up adding Matthew to the FBI's most wanted list. He ended up getting caught in the end and serving 13 years in prison for all of his crimes. Since Matthew has gotten out of prison, he's been doing a lot of great things, such as starting his own YouTube channel that has been growing very well. He's got a lot of great interviews on there, lots of great guests. He's also written quite a few books. Please subscribe to my channel to get more interviews like this. And without further ado, let's get into Matthew's story. All right, Matt, here we are, man. Finally getting this to going, and I really appreciate you taking out some time and coming on my podcast to share your story. You got one hell of a story, man, and you got one hell of a channel where I've seen a lot of good interviews on there, man. So thank you for taking out the time and coming on, Matthew.
No problem. No problem. What are we doing? What are we talking about?
Well, I think we're going to be talking about your life story, man. So, or where you got in trouble, I suppose. The aspect of you going to prison and eventually doing a lot of stuff. So what was your life like before you got involved with crime, or were you always involved with crime?
No, I mean, I didn't actually, commit any crimes. I was, raised in Temple Terrace, which is like a suburb kind of Tampa. And I, went to schools. I went to the schools, type of schools I went to were for kids with learning disabilities. I had a learning disability and ended up getting a degree in like fine arts from University of South Florida. But I'd never really gotten in trouble. I was like a normal kid, probably a little troubled, but not like crime wise. And then when I got out of college, I started working as a mortgage broker. I mean, I had some other, crappy jobs in between the mortgage broker gig, but nothing was working. You tried to be an insurance adjuster, that didn't work out. Tried to did construction, that wasn't. One, it's horrible. It's backbreaking work, especially if you're not super skilled. So, I'm basically working as kind of a carpenter and not making great money. So I had a girlfriend that worked at she had gotten like a job, kind of like a part-time job. She was going to school. She was stripping at night. She was going to school at USF during the day and was working at where was she working? She was she was working at a subprime lender, like a mortgage brokerage business that did predominantly, well, not predominantly, 100%. They did subprime loans.
Mm-hmm.
So she was telling me, you should go work here. You'd be great at this. So I went to work there, and you had to go away for training. So I went away I had to go for like a 3-day training. And then I came back, and then you have to drum up business. Like, they're not giving you leads. You had to drum up business, and then you have to close loans. So, I mean, it was me on the phone for like a week or two drumming up business. And then I end up closing like 4 loans the first month I was there.
Is that good or bad?
That was super good, especially within a month. A lot of people had been there 2-3 months and hadn't closed a loan yet. So I was making phone calls to real estate agents and investors, like that guy, they call them investors, but they basically are rehabbers. They flip houses.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm saying, hey, do you have any clients, anybody that you can't get a loan for? We can do 95% financing on people with as low as like whatever, 500, 550 credit scores. I mean, so we would, I drum up the business. And then the first loan I had, I brought it into my manager's office, and she went through the whole thing and there was one page she kind of pulled out and put it to the side and said, it's called a verification of rent. And she said, "You didn't look at this, did you?" I was like, "No, why?" And she said, your client, your borrower was 30 days late on her rent in the last 2 years. And I was like, holy shit. So, and that meant that the deal was dead. Like that was one of the underwriting guidelines, was they could not have been 30 days late. So I just thought, I remember thinking, it was over. And I mean, I was in desperate need for the money too. Like I'm late on everything, all my bills, because I basically haven't been paid in 2-3 weeks, and I'm already kind of behind. So she told me to white it out. I'm like, "Man, what am I going to do?" And she was like, "If I was you, I'd white it out." And she pulled out the bottle and handed me a bottle, white out. And she's like, "White it out, make a copy, stick it in there, stick it in the file." She's like, "They'll never figure it out. They'll never catch it." And so, a week later, roughly, the loan closed, and I got a check for like $3,500 or something.
Damn.
And which was a lot of money at that point.
Yeah.
And, so, I kept working there for a few months, maybe 6 more months, 8 more months, maybe. And then I ended up opening my own place, and I hired a bunch of guys, and, probably about a dozen guys at my own brokerage business. And honestly, I probably never would have left that original place, except that the FBI shut them down.
Oh,
Like
really?
the
They were
Department of
doing
Banking came in, FBI came in, and they like locked the doors on the place. I don't know what exactly. I never really found out exactly what happened, but I mean, it had nothing to do with me. Like it was the management. They closed down a bunch of stores, and they'd gotten a ton of complaints for loans that had not been funded. They had major problems. So I go and I start my own place. And once I start my own place, we're committing fraud, because by that point, all the loans I'm doing had fraud in them. Very quickly, it just became the easiest way.
I was gonna say, so but that first one where you whited out that document, that was your first fraud, like, that's what they
It was the
call
first
fraud, and
loan. Yeah, it was the first loan I did, and it had fraud.
so anything where you alter the document even yeah, so that's fraud right there, you
Yeah,
just that
anything.
just something like that, but so, yeah, like, it's just
And listen, that
changing
chick,
document.
that borrower, she paid all the payments. It's not like that loan went under. She made all the payments. She refinanced it like 2 years later. She eventually sold the house. She made like $100,000 on it. Like, I mean, I met her. I actually know her. I've to this day, I know who she is. Right. So, she told me like, "Oh man, to her, like, obviously she was thrilled about getting in the house.
Right.
But that is fraud. You lied on an application, and you, or even, you altered a document. But
So, I was gonna
very
say oh, go ahead. I didn't
I
wanna
was gonna
cut
say,
you
but
off.
very quickly, like everything I was doing had fraud in it. Like I'm changing W-2s, I'm changing pay stubs, I'm doing anything to get the loans to go through. And then I open my own place, and the brokers that I'm hiring, they're changing documents. They're doing everything. Or we're just trying to get these things in.
And s
You know,
where did you have any fear of getting busted or anything like that, or did you think you had a
I
pretty
mean, I
tight
did,
operation?
being on the inside, you don't, I mean, was I afraid of it? Yeah, I don't want to get caught, but being on the inside, you have to think, you get the package to underwriting to the underwriting department of a lender, and they look through it. Now, if they look through everything and say, "Hey, you got everything here, you meet all the requirements, let's close the loan," and it goes through quality control, and they make all the phone calls, and they come back and they say, "Yeah, it's perfect," uh, and if during that process they find a document um, that has fraud in it, they'll call you. And the way that conversation is, "Listen, we have a problem." And you're like, "Whoa, what's up?" They're like, "The Browns." And I'm like, "Right. Yeah, yeah. How's that going?" They're like, "Well, we made some phone calls. Turns out he doesn't even work
Hmm,
where you said, where he said he worked." What? No, he has W-2s and pay stubs. What are you talking about? And they go, "No, listen, Matt, we called. Like the phone number on the application isn't the same phone number in the business directory. And, we called that number, and they said he doesn't even work there." I'm like, "Are you
damn.
serious? Holy shit." And they're like, "Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just letting you know, we're going to deny it." Like, oh my God. Keep in mind, they don't think I did it. They think that the borrower did it.
Did they go after the borrower or legal or anything?
They didn't lend him any money.
That's it. They don't even pursue legal action or nothing.
No, especially back then. They may now. I don't know what they do now.
Yeah.
But, back then they were like, yeah, we're not going to do the loan. I know you got to look out, man, this guy's a bad guy. I don't know what these W-2s and pay stubs, they look really good. I'm like, wow, man, they did look good. I can't believe this guy. Boy, the ball's on him. So, and then I just take it and I change the phone number, or I change wherever I said he worked, and I send it. You very quickly, you get caught like that and you realize, okay, so they're using a business directory. So whenever I do something like this, I have to list the business in that business directory. Or what I actually ultimately did was I just opened up different corporations, or I went and I got corporations that were open, but let's say they were in another area of the state or another state. And then I would use their tax ID number, and then I would list that business only under a DBA. So you'd say, let's say it was called, let's say there was something called, I did this one of these was Express. It was just called, I think it was just called Express. And so I listed it as Express DBA Express Tax Services. So it was listed as Express Tax Services in the business directory. So when the underwriting would check Express Tax Services in Tampa, Florida, that's the number they would get. They wouldn't get the place that was in, let's say, Miami or in Atlanta, Georgia, or if it was listed somewhere else, if they had a business somewhere else. Because one, it's a different name, and two, mine's in Tampa. So I wouldn't pull anything from Tampa. It'd be like Miami, and I'd give a DBA, or I'd just open a corporation, or I'd buy a corporation that had gone inactive and just pay the back taxes and, the back state fees, and they would make the corporation active again, and I put it in somebody's name, and now I've got an active corporation, and so I would use the tax ID number. So I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. So you were buying these old companies and stuff then?
Right. So it's a shell corporation, right? So it's anyway, I would do that, and then so that was a way to get around that particular issue. So I didn't have that. Every time you get caught, you learn something.
Right.
So, well, eventually I ended up getting married, and I had, how did I put this? I had gotten married and bought a bunch of rental properties, and my wife had bought a bunch of rental properties, and I'd bought a bunch of rental properties. She had like 50 something rental properties.
Damn.
And we would also flip houses. So I'd buy houses and flip them. Well, one of the ways to get around that is I would buy a house in my name. So there's a problem as far as flipping houses is concerned. There's most underwriters or have a guideline is if you buy a house for, let's say, $50,000 and you put $25,000 in it, and now it's worth $150,000.
Mm-hmm.
You think, okay, well, I can get an appraisal for $150 and refinance it, get all my money back, and then some. You can after 1 year. So I don't want to wait the year. I put $75,000 into something. I want to get the money back and then some as soon as possible, and I want to keep it as a rental unit, or maybe even rent it out and sell it. So I would just sell it to my wife at the time in her maiden name, because she never took my name.
Yeah. And you're already married at this point. So nobody was looking at that or
but they don't know she never took my name.
Damn.
So, and I'm not closing these loans in my company, because that would be a non-arm's length transaction. I'd close them in I had a friend that owned a mortgage company. I'd close them in her mortgage company. This was a woman that used to work for me. So I close them over there, and, no big deal. Well, what happens is one day she gets raided by the FBI for running what's called a straw man scam. And a straw man scam is when, let's say, your buddy comes to you and says, hey man, I got a couple properties. Can you buy them from me? And we'll pull out $400,000, out of the property. Let's say the property, it'll appraise at $500,000, but I can buy it for, $300,000. So you buy it for $500,000, and we'll split the homeowner is going to get an extra $200,000, but they're going to give it to us, and I'll give you some money. So she did a bunch of these for a couple of unsavory guys, and they made like $500,000, and she made like $100,000 just doing the loans.
Wow.
So the problem is these guys never made the first payment even. They all go into foreclosure. The FBI gets involved. They come to her. They raid her office. All her employees quit. And she needs to hire an attorney. She's like been indicted. She's freaking out. She needs to hire a lawyer. She comes to me and says, can you refinance my house and pull out some money for me? She's like, I said, yeah, sure. So she gives me fake W-2s. So I refinance her house using fake income docs and get her 75 grand. She gives it to an attorney. The first thing the attorney says is, you need to wear a wire against this mortgage broker that just refinanced your house.
So what ended up happening?
So she calls me one day and says, hey, can you come in? Can you meet me? Well, she wanted to come to my office. I was like, yeah, we'll meet at a pizza place down the street. Cause all my brokers were like, when she would call or something, they'd all go, whoop, 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 whoop. If she walked in, they'd go, whoop, whoop. Like, like watch out for her. She's the police. Like they would joke about it. But I remember thinking she's not going to say anything about me. So I go to a pizza place to meet her. While I'm there, while we're talking, she starts asking me questions. She and her husband are there and they're asking me questions. They're like, look, the FBI raided our office. They took your files and now they're asking questions about you and your wife. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, you didn't tell them that the W-2s were fake, did you? You didn't tell them the pay stubs were fake. You didn't tell them that we're married, did you? And she's like, well, we haven't told them anything yet. But I mean, right then she was wired. So I just buried myself. I just said I knew the W-2s are fake. The pay stubs are fake, that I just knew everything, And so I realized she's wired at the time. And I kind of just, I say to her that, hey, like, I'm like, man, I just basically, it was like, I can't believe you just did this. I'm like, I hope you get something for this. And she's like, I don't have to go to jail, Matt. And she's crying and everything. And I get up and I leave. Well, the FBI agent calls me. I get a lawyer. I never do go and talk to him. I've never talked to that. Never even seen that FBI agent that I really know of. So my lawyer ends up arranging a deal where I can get 3 years probation. So I take 3 years probation. I go in front of a judge. I mean, he sentences me. I get 3 years. I can't be a mortgage broker anymore. I can't own the mortgage company anymore. So what I do is, like I did the wrong thing. Like what I should have done, because I was by this point, keep in mind that takes a year. It's over a year before I go in front of the judge.
That long?
Yeah.
What was going through your head during that time then, when that whole year? Like,
I didn't think I was going to go to jail. At first, my lawyer was like, oh, you're probably going to have to go to jail. Well, there was no money loss. Oh, it's not how it works. Well, it is how it works. So, we go through the whole thing and he's like, it's funny. The same stuff that I said to him at our first meeting. I'm like, I don't understand. He's like, well, that's not how it works. There's potential loss. I'm like, there's no potential loss. The property was worth $200,000. They lent me $160,000. Where's the loss? Where's the potential for loss? They have, well, that's not how it works. Of course, 6 months later, he's patting himself on the back. I worked out a deal for you. He said they were trying to get you for potential loss, but I explained to them. So he goes, see, the way it works is if the asset is more than the loan, there's no potential for loss. I'm like, oh, is that how it works? Okay.
You already explained that to him.
Like, you're a douchebag. And he got me, he clipped me for 75 grand too. So, so anyway, I get 3 years, but I can't be a mortgage broker anymore, So I end up kind of owner financing that business to a guy who was a CPA, and he pays me like $8 grand a month because it was doing well. There was a bunch of brokers, like we're closing loans, and by that point we have a couple locations. And what I decided to do is I wanted to open like a development company, like develop inner city properties. And the problem, and I wanted to, kind of flip properties, right? Like I'm thinking I'm going to flip properties, but I want to buy some properties. You flip the ones you don't want, you keep the ones that are money makers. And that's how it started out. But then it turned into the only place that I could really afford to buy those properties, and the only place that there was enough of a disparity between what you could buy a property for and what they would appraise at, was this area in Tampa called Ybor City. And
how's the area there?
It's a shithole. But you could buy properties for 40 grand, 50 grand.
Oh, they're cheap then.
Yeah. And this is 20 years ago. I mean, keep in mind, now those same properties are going for 400,000 or 500,000, and they're shitholes.
Really, the same shitholes.
Well, I mean, you have to understand that they're right downtown. Like in Florida, just in general, you can find a place that that, you know, 10 years ago was going for $100,000 and now is going for 350.
Just
It's
because it's
it's
downtown location?
no, it's just because real estate's insane right now. It's crazy. So these properties, I would go in there and, I wanted to buy them for 50, put 25 or 30 in them and sell them for, 100, 110. The problem is you have to get people to buy them. The people in those areas that buy properties in that shitty area don't have great credit. So now I'm
Mhm.
dealing with people that have bad credit. They don't have their down payments. Like they're a pain to work with. And then it's like, and then so I started thinking, well, what I could do is do a straw buyer scam, right? Like you get somebody to buy them at top dollar. But even top dollar is 100,000, 110,000. And what are you going to make? 30, 25, 30? And then I have to split it with the guy that's going to be the straw buyer. And he can only buy so many. You can really only get so many mortgages in a short period of time.
How
And
many?
obviously, what?
How many would you say?
4 or 5, maybe 6
Oh, so
before
you
they
wanna
start.
make sure they're big ones then, you think, or
Well, what I want to make sure is that I maximize. I mean, how big can they be? It can only appraise it to at 100,000.
no? Yeah.
So he's got to buy 5 of them,
Mhm.
and I got to buy 5 houses. I don't have that kind of money, so I'm going to hard money lenders, that sort of thing, to buy the properties. And then I started thinking, I don't want to split the money with this straw buyer. And then straw buyers do stupid stuff like they don't pay the first payment. Well, which is what happened with these other idiots with this chick. So I don't want to deal with that. Like I'm gonna have to make the payments, split the money. Like these guys are asshole. Like they're gonna be he's gonna be a pain. Anybody who's gonna do this is gonna be a pain in the ass to deal with. And
Right.
then they're always gonna be like, well, I'm the one that got screwed. I have all these foreclosures and I deserve this and I deserve. And it's like, all right, you know what? I don't want to deal with that. So I figured, if I just created my own buyers, where if I could just figure out how to kind of create a fake person, then I don't have to split the money. So what I
Yeah.
did was I figured out how to get Social Security to issue me Social Security numbers to children that don't exist.
How the hell do you go about doing that?
Well, if you go to social, it took a bunch of phone calls and some, I had to ask a lot of questions, but eventually I figured out that if you go to Social Security with a birth certificate for like a 9 or 10 month old child
Mhm.
and a shot record, then they'll issue you a Social Security number. Like your kid was born at home with a midwife, you know, and you've got the shot record and you've got the birth certificate proving that the kid's alive and gotten all their shots. They'll give you a Social Security number. They'll issue it. So I got them to issue me Social Security numbers to different people. And then I would take that Social Security number and then I would go and apply for credit cards. But I wouldn't say it was a 9 month old or 10 month old child. I'd say it's a 30-year-old man. So, Social Security has no idea who this person is. So they immediately create a credit profile and then you get a secured credit card. They're going to give you the credit card because I put up $500. So of course they're going to give me a credit card. So I get 3 secured credit cards and I made the payments for 6 months and I'd have like 700 credit scores.
Damn, and then with those, you could buy actual property or rent property?
What? No, not well. Now I've got a person that has a 700 credit score. I can obviously make the W-2s and pay stubs. I can verify the person's rent. Um, I knew several people that own property management companies. Plus, I could just make canceled checks. I could make what appears to be a check that was cashed. So it's called a canceled check. Most people don't know what this is anymore, but when you write a check, it goes through the bank and through the routing system. And they print these numbers on the back of it and the front of it. So I could make checks that looked like that. And if you called the bank to verify it, I set up a bank account online. I mean, sorry, a bank website online to a bank called Bank of Ybor or Southern Exchange Bank of Clarksville. So you could actually go to the bank website and call them and they would verify the checks because I'm the one that started the website.
Damn.
And
So
I could all right, good.
you created a whole lot of shit to make these guys legit, everything from companies to fake people and just all around, but that's how you don't, I suppose, get caught, but you ended up, but
Well, I ended up
yeah.
getting caught, but what ended up happening was the issue was now it's like, okay, you're doing all this stuff. So the cool thing was if I bought the house for 50,000, I might put 10 in it, right? Because this person doesn't exist. He's not going to live there. So I would put maybe 10,000 in it to clean up the outside of it. I would get an appraisal for the property. So, but I could still only sell it for, let's say, $100,000. So what am I going to make? 30? Maybe 25 or 30, maybe not even 40, because they're not going to lend you 100%. You've got to come up with a down payment and pay closing costs. By the time you're done, it's like, okay, what did I make? So I thought, what, if I could do this, I need to be able to get these things to appraise higher. And the way appraisals work is appraisals go off of comparable sales. So if you're buying a house in a neighborhood where all the houses sell for $100,000 and your house is comparable to those, your house is worth $100,000. You can say, oh no, mine has wood floors. Okay, you might get a few $100s more. Oh, I've got my lawn is manicured. Okay, that's not going to get you much of anything. Like, all the things that you could really do is you're just not going to get a lot more money. So unless it was, even if you add more square footage, you're not going to get much more. I mean, we're talking about a few thousand. It's never going to be exactly what it costs to dump that in there. So the only way to really get a higher value is to compare it to higher value houses. So I was dating this chick at the time, and she worked for a title company. And I said, how can I get these sales to show up higher? Like right now, the sales in the neighborhoods are showing up for around 100,000. How can I get them to show up for 200,000? And she said, well, I mean, if you paid the extra doc stamps on the deed, it would reflect a higher sales price. So if you buy a house for 100,000, you pay about $700 in doc stamps. But if you were to buy it for 100,000 and you paid $1,400, it's going to show up as a sale for 200,000. So I would buy these houses for 50,000. I'd pay an extra 1,150 or whatever it came to, and the sales would show up for 200, 210, 220, 215. And so now when I bought the house for 50, it looks like I bought it for 220. And if I have an appraiser come in, he looks at the property and he says, well, it's a shitty area, but that house over there just sold for 210. That one sold for 200 and that one sold for 225. Your house is worth 220 at least. So now I can refinance the house. So I refinance the house, get a $190,000 loan on a house that I have $160,000 in, because I bought it for 50, put 10,000 to clean it up a little bit. The comparable sales are all around it because I created the comparable sales. And so now I start doing this in different identities names, different synthetic identities names. And each identity is buying 5, sometimes 6 houses and getting loans for $150,000 to $200,000.
So how much were you clearing, like, off of a house usually
I
around this
mean,
time?
like, if I borrowed $1 million on 5 houses, I might have cleared 600,000.
Damn, man.
But then
And
I would also, by that point, you've got pretty solid credit, like the credit's pretty solid. So I would get unsecured credit cards for 10,000, 15, 20,000, 7,000, whatever. And then I'd also go and apply for personal loans. And so I'd go to 4 different places and get 4 different personal loans
and just rack it up.
and just run up and just take that, run up the credit cards, pull the money out. I'd open up bank accounts in these guys' names. Because by that, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, how did what the money that you did make, like, what would you do with it? Like, would you put it in your bank? I mean, or someone else's bank, or did you just keep it all cash, or what'd you do with all that?
Well, I mean, I was also owned a development company, so we're buying vacant lots. We bought like 100 vacant lots.
Jeez,
Vacant
man.
lots are going for like between $10,000 and $30,000, and we were building at several different properties. So that costs hundreds of thousands. You're giving the contractor. So we're building those houses in that area because we farmed the area. So it's called a farming scam. We'd raise the value of the area up through the roof. So why would we buy all the vacant lots and start building houses? The value's there. And that's what we were doing. And I did that over the course of 18 months. I borrowed like $11.5 million. It was like 100 well, the FBI said it was over 100 houses, but I don't think that's true. So, Yeah, I mean, at some point, a buddy of mine who was a sheriff's deputy, who I'd done several loans for. I'd done a bunch of loans for him and his ex-wife. He comes to me one day. I remember in his uniform, and it's like 4 o'clock. He walks in my office and he says, "Hey, can I talk to you?" I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" And he like looks around. He's like, "Can I talk to you outside?" And I was like, "Sure." So I go outside. I go, "What's up?" And he said, "I used to date a chick that works for Tampa Police Department." I was like, "Okay." He worked for Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department. I went, "Okay." He said, she was on a task force for the past few months." And I was like, "Okay." He said, "They were investigating you." He said, "My name came up during the investigation, and she said they're coming to arrest you." I was like, "Holy shit." And keep in mind, I'm doing this scam with other people. Like I have I have people pretending to be these guys and going into the closings, and I'm doing them in like Clearwater. I'm doing them in Orlando. Well, one of my buddies in Orlando had gotten arrested, but it was a state charge. I paid like 15 or 20,000 to get him a lawyer. And he's saying he's not going to, we're just going to pay the money back, and he's probably not going to end up going to jail. So, but he's not feeling bad about it at all. He's like, "Oh, I'm not going to have to go to jail." He's saying he's going to get me, if I can just pay him the money back. And he borrowed 300,000. Well, it turns out he actually wasn't worried about it because he was cooperating with the task force.
Damn.
So
And you didn't had no clue or
no,
indication at all.
no clue. And the whole time he's milking me for money too. Like he's coming in like every week going, "Hey man, like, I need a couple $1,000s to pay my rent." I'm like, "Of course, here's $2,000. Hey man, I obviously I don't want to do anything illegal, but I'm thinking about opening a tree trimming business. And, I'd really like to buy he was a cherry picker, which is that thing that goes up in the, it's the crane thing that goes in the trees." And I
Right.
was like, "Of course." He's like, "I can get one for about 10 grand. I'm like, "Of course, here's 10 grand. I'm thinking I need a truck, bro. Let me go get you a truck. What kind of truck do you want? Let's get you a Dodge truck. You a Ram? You like the Rams, right? You want a Hemi?" So, I'm just trying to keep him happy,
Right.
but really he's working the whole time. He's just milking me.
And you didn't think he was at all? Like, you
No,
didn't
of
know?
course. Listen, I've known
Damn.
this guy my whole life. He was my best friend when I was growing up. So,
Wow.
um, so when he says, so when the sheriff's deputy says, yeah, they've been working on there's a task force. He said, I was like, "Are you on me?" And I was like, "Holy shit." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you know somebody that got arrested in Orlando?" And I was like, "Oh, wow." Like that was my buddy. I was like, "Yeah, my buddy Travis." He goes, "Well, he's cooperating, bro."
Huh.
He's
How did
like,
you
he goes, he said, "The chick I used to date," he was like, "She just told me not to tell you. She told me just to stay away from you. Like, don't talk to this guy enough." Because once the way she's thinking, once we grab this guy, he's going to cooperate. And she didn't want me to give him up.
Hmm.
So she's like, "Don't talk to this guy on the phone. Don't anything. They're going to arrest him. He's going to cooperate. So you just stay away from him." He goes, "Okay." But I just couldn't do that to you, bro." He's like, "So I wanted to let you know what was going on." I said, "No problem." He goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, I'm leaving. I'm taking off." He goes, "Well, where are you going to go?" I said, I'm going on the run. I'm leaving." I said, "I can't go to prison. I
So
can't do it."
how did you feel when you heard that though? Like he was cooperating, like, and that, like, did it break your heart in some kind of way?
I'll be honest with you. I don't have much of a heart. Like, I just thought he's got a daughter. Like I didn't expect it. In a way you're always kind of thinking like I'm terrified that he might cooperate. So it's already in my mind. But the guy had a daughter, I mean, oh, buddies or not, I'm sorry, but do you have any kids?
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah. You
almost 7 years old, man.
yeah. How many people's heads would you chop clean off their fucking bodies for your kid?
Right. No, I get it.
Every single one of them. Every one of them. So if my buddy's got to go do 5 years in prison, so that I can stay outside with my kid, fuck him. You're going. We don't
Yeah.
that friendship don't mean shit compared to that kid, right? So,
Right.
um, I wasn't upset with him at all, really. I just was like, my whole thing is, listen, my immediate problem is the FBI's coming to arrest me because that's what the guy's telling me. Like, they're gonna come arrest you like within a day or two. Like, they gave them the task force findings. It's clearly federal. The FBI is coming to arrest me, and I'm already on federal probation.
Yeah,
So
so you're in deep shit.
Yeah,
Deep
they
shit.
don't need to do anything. They can just come pick me up. Hey,
You're
Mr.
not
Cox, we're just going to violate you and throw you in prison.
right. You're not supposed to be any of that shit at all.
Right.
So you ended up going on the run. Like, did you have? I think when you went on the run, like, how was it with your family? Did they know you were taking off?
I wrote them a
And
letter.
That's how you did it.
I
So
just wrote them a letter. Well, I couldn't face them, you know.
um,
So, and there was a chick I was dating. So when I'm packing my bags, like I went home and I'm like, I could first of all, this is like a Thursday at 4:00. So between Thursday and Friday, I get out like 80 grand. Like
80
that's all I
grand.
could. Yeah. Like that's all I could get out of the bank, but in cash. You know, you can't just walk into a bank and say, "Hey, can I get $400,000?" They're not going to give it to you.
Hell no.
You know, and these other accounts that had money in them were in the names of these synthetic individuals, right? Which they know about. So I can't go clean those accounts. I can't go and say, I need $9,000. And then I go to another one. I need $9,000. Like, because if I do, then the FBI is going to be like, okay, this guy's pulling money out of all these accounts. Even if I kept it under, even if I said it was something reasonable, you know, it doesn't matter. I can't go get, I can't, you know, and look, there was hundreds of thousands of dollars. You just can't get to it. And most of it, honestly, is already in real estate. So it's not like there's millions of dollars sitting in an account somewhere. We've just got it spread out between, it's not liquid. So I end up getting like 80,000 in cash and I'm packing a bag and the chick shows up that I've been dating like a month and a half. And she shows up. We're supposed to go out on a date. I hadn't talked to her in like all day. Like she just came anyway. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, fuck, man." I was terrified when she came in. I remember I heard the front door go, "Deet, deet," and I thought, fuck.
Damn.
Like, would the FBI just walk in?
Oh, shit.
And she walks around the corner. And she's just like, "Hey." I'm like, "Oh, shit. What's up?"
Damn.
So I tell her what happened. And she sees I've got all this cash. And she's like, "What's going on?" I said, "This is what happened. And I'm leaving." And she's like, "Well, I want to come with you." And I was like, "What are you, fucking nuts? Like, we don't even know each other." And so she comes with me. We run up all my credit cards over the next 2 days. For some fucking reason in my head, I kept thinking to myself, they weren't going to arrest me on the weekend. I don't know why.
Why?
I don't know. He did say, like, I do remember he said, "Bro, they're probably going to come get you on Monday or Tuesday. Like, they're going to come. They're going to raid the. They're planning on like he's like." So I felt like, oh, I'm good for the weekend. But the truth is, he doesn't know anything really.
No.
So, and I just felt like, maybe they don't work. You know, like for some reason it was like, it's the weekend. They're not going to arrest me on the weekend. Like I had no idea. So I take this girl with me, which is a huge mistake. And we end up going on the run. We go to Atlanta. I immediately I go to Alabama. We rent a place. I go to Alabama. And when I go to Alabama, I had the information of a guy that I knew named Scott Cugno. So I go to Alabama and I get a driver's license in his name.
Really?
I go open up some bank accounts in his name. And then I make some fake IDs. Like I was pretty good at making Florida IDs. So I make some fake IDs. Like they weren't great. I mean, compared to a real ID, they're not great, but they'll fool you. Like I never had anybody really say this isn't a real ID.
Did you change your appearance and shit too, or any of that?
Sometimes I did. I grew out a goatee. I had like the goatee thing. Keep in mind, I didn't look exactly like this either. You know, once I went on the run, I ended up having plastic surgery. Like I had a nose job. I had a
really?
face. Oh, bro, I had my hair transplant.
What?
I'm like bald. Like my hair actually goes way back to here. Like it starts.
Wow.
All of this is from the back of my head.
So you looked a lot different.
Yeah, I look different. So, and I got my teeth done. You know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, nice and white.
Yeah, they're nice and white, and they're all, you know, a little bit bigger. They're a little bit better.
Yeah.
So we go to Atlanta. We rented an apartment. We also rented a house. So I rent this house, and the owner's name was Michael Shanahan. So I make a fake ID in the name Michael Shanahan, and I go down to Fulton County Public Records. And I satisfy, he has several loans on his house. He has like 2 loans with Bank of America. So I create 2 satisfaction of mortgages for Bank of America for those loans, and I file them. So now if you look in public records on his house, he doesn't have any loans at all. It just shows he owns the house. It's worth $200,000 and Michael Shanahan owns it free and clear.
So you paid these loans? Is that what that means?
No, like, so you have a mortgage on your house, right?
Right.
So let's say
what
your
does
house.
satisfy mean, I suppose? What does that mean?
Well, let's face it. If you borrow 200,000 on your house, when you eventually pay that off, how does public records know that there's no longer a lien on your house? Bank of America, once they get paid in full, they create a satisfaction of loan or satisfaction of mortgage. They mail it to public records. Public records gets the document. They file it on your title. So it says that Adrian owns this house. It's in your name. Adrian took out a mortgage for 200,000. Adrian satisfied the mortgage. He paid it in full.
Oh, so you manipulated that somehow.
I created a fake satisfaction of mortgage that looked like it was from Bank of America. Of course, Bank of America doesn't realize their lien is no longer on your title. They think that they still have a lien. So you're still paying because you don't know I did this. So Michael Shanahan is still making the payments. Only now I'm Michael Shanahan living in Michael Shanahan's house. So if I call somebody, so I call 3 hard money lenders. You know what a hard money lender is?
No, what is that?
So, an institutional lender is like a bank or a finance company, but a hard money lender is a guy that lends you money based on the value of your house and the equity in your house. So he'll lend you 65% of the value of your house at like a 13% or 12% interest rate and charges 2 or 3 points. Kind of like your buddy Sal and the nosebreakers would do. They would lend money at a high interest rate. Of course, they charge like 30% or something. Ridiculous.
Oh yeah, 30, 50.
Yeah, but this guy charges you 12 because he's also has a lien on your house. He's going to get paid. So I call 3 of these guys, and one of them meets me on like Monday, one meets me on Tuesday morning, and the other one meets me like Tuesday afternoon. None of them know about each other. I schedule closings with all of them at the same time with different title companies. They all lend me $150,000 on the house within a day of each other. And when that loan is, so they give me the checks, I go deposit the checks and I start taking out cash. So I end up with like $400,000.
Damn. So that set you pretty good. We were sitting pretty good at that point on the run.
Yeah, I've got 400,000. By that point, we probably had blown through the 80. And we did some other stuff. Like we went to Tallahassee and did a house there for like 50 or 60 grand. And keep in mind, this chick's driving me nuts. Like now that we're on the run, she's a basket. I realize she's bipolar. She's a basket case. She's, I'm not in love with her. Like I barely even knew her. Hadn't really even slept with her, but maybe a dozen times in a month and a half. I don't even know her. Like maybe half a dozen times. Like I barely even know this chick.
Yeah. So you just had the urge to take a chick with you when she wanted to go. You're just like, whatever.
Bro, I was in a bad state of mind. Like I'm going on the run. Like that's a big deal for you to up and leave everything and everybody and you're not calling and I have to go do all this on my own. Like it's easier with somebody. And that was her whole thing. Like this is going to be easier with somebody because I didn't want to take her. Like it took her all weekend to like wear me down. She didn't leave my side for the whole weekend. So finally I was like, okay, I'll bring you with me. And I told her over and over again, like, listen, I don't think this is ever going to be love for me. Like, I mean, we're dating, but honestly, we don't know each other and we don't have a lot in common. And I just don't think this is going to be, this is going to be love. She was like, I don't care if it's love. She's like, are you going to be able to get the money? And I was like, yeah. Yeah, of course. She's broke. She's poor. It's a poor chick. So she saw the money I had anyway. I'm driving a fucking Audi sports car. If you drove through Ybor City, I'm like, I own that house. I own that house. I own those 3 houses. I own that quadplex. I own that quadplex, that duplex. I own that triplex. See these 2 brand new construction homes that are halfway built. I own those 2. See this 4 lots right here. I own those 4 lots. See, I mean, keep in mind, you've got over 100 and some odd lots and
that's a lot.
50, 60, 70 houses and rental properties. And Ybor City is not that big. So every corner we turned, I own those 2 houses. I just bought those. I sold those 2 3 days ago.
Damn.
That house right there. I used to know a guy that owned that. It's currently in foreclosure. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
Just constant. Holy crap, yeah. Well, I mean, when you were at this point with her, like, did she eventually dip out then, or did you met a new girl, I believe, too, or some one of these girls ended up, or maybe that was the situation where your friend ended up cooperating, right? Like, he got set up, or, like, he got into trouble a little bit?
bro, they
Like,
all
wasn't
cooperated.
yeah, but I mean, like, what ended up happening with this girl, though? Like, wasn't there, like, a breaking point or an ending point with you 2, and then you
Yeah, what happened was at one point we're pulling out money. I started doing another scam, right? Like I got the 400,000. We went to Charlotte, North Carolina, but I was running a scam in Columbia, or is it Columbus? Columbus, South Carolina. I went and I surveyed a home. I was surveying homeless people at that point. I wasn't making the synthetic identities. I'm just surveying homeless people because with a homeless person, I got a real birth certificate, a real social security card, and I could just go into the DMV and get a real driver's license because I can't drive around on a fake ID. So what? Don't judge me. I was desperate. So, and I would give these guys like $20 to take a survey. They don't even know I've stolen their identity. I'm like, hey, I'm doing a survey for the Salvation Army to try and determine where we're going to place our next homeless facility. And they would go, oh, okay, well, rarely almost all of them said, I'm not interested. I go, it pays $20 cash right now. What? Yeah, bro. What do you need? And then they give me all their information. They don't realize I've stolen their identity. You think 2 weeks later, they wouldn't even remember talking to me.
no, probably not.
Which is exactly what you want. And I'm not surveying these guys in the same state that I would steal their identity. I would go to like Las Vegas, or I would go to Alabama, Tennessee, and then I'd go to South Carolina with their birth certificate, social security card, because I would order all of it online, get it. I'd order a copy of their high school transcripts. I'd order a copy of their driving record. I'd register to vote in their name. And then I'd go to South Carolina, go into the DMV, boom, get a driver's license. They have no idea.
A legit license and everything, man. That's insane, like, really, because all you had to really do was just talk to these guys and just kinda manipulate them and trick them into giving you their information, and to be able to do that, and that's all the right things to get their information and be able to apply for different stuff, and that's
Yeah.
insane that you were able to figure that out or really think about that. I mean, I've never thought about that, but that is a reason why people have to be so damn careful with who they give their information with.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It's very sad. So, what I did was I would take that information and I feel bad. So, I would take that information and I would get bank accounts, and then I'd live as one guy, and then another guy would run a scam in his name. So I was living in this Michael Eckert. I was living as Michael Eckert, but actually at one point I changed his name to Michael Johnson just to see
Oh,
if I could do it. I went and got a
yeah.
lawyer, paid him $1,500. I got his name changed. So just wanted to see what the process was. So, but I'm living as Michael Eckert, and I've got a couple vehicles in his name, a condo. By this point, Becky and I, the chick Becky, we broke up. She's living in another condo. I end up going to South Carolina's Gary Sullivan, and I buy 2 houses. I satisfy the loans on those houses, and I refinance them 5 or 6 times, and I end up pulling out like $1.3 million. So there's
Damn.
1.3 million in a couple in like 10 bank accounts. And I start pulling out the money. So I'm pulling out the money. Well, what happens is I get caught in the bank. So these 2 sheriff deputies come up behind me and they handcuff me. And then a detective comes and he starts questioning me, but they're calling me Gary Sullivan. Like, they don't know who I am. And at this point, like, I know I'm already, the FBI is looking for me. The Secret Service is looking for me. So, I know the U.S. Marshals are looking for me, right? So, like but they're calling me Gary Sullivan. So I realize they don't understand and who I am. And of course I've got a driver's license, Gary Sullivan. So, that was an ID. Well, I end up convincing them. So the bank was saying, we lent this guy a first mortgage. There's 2 other mortgages on the property. He's committed fraud. And so they're saying arrest him. And I convinced the sheriff, the deputy, I'm sorry, the detective. I convinced the detective that I haven't done anything wrong, that it's very possible that the loan officers at the bank may have committed some kind of fraud, but I certainly didn't. I work for a labor company. I'm a site manager. I own a couple properties. I came to the bank. I applied for a loan. They gave me a loan. That's all I know. That loan officer told me she had a friend that could get me a second mortgage. I went to her. She got me a second mortgage. That person said she knew a loan officer to get me a HELOC. So I got the HELOC. I said, I haven't done anything wrong. And none of them told me that I was doing anything illegal. And so keep in mind, there is no second mortgage or a HELOC. They're all first mortgages. And Wachovia Bank, the bank knew that. And they're trying to convince the officer about that's true. And the officer takes my side and says, I think you guys have a problem at the bank. He ends up letting me follow him back to the police station. I fill out a police report and he lets me go.
But no, damn, just like that, that's insane that they had you do that. Like, you were able to literally tell them, hey, this is me. Like, they had no clue that you were, at this point, you were on what, like America's Most Wanted too?
Well, I mean,
on their list?
No, at this point, I was number one on the Secret Service's Most Wanted, but I was also on the
Oh.
FBI's Most Wanted, the US, but not number one. I was just on the list. There's like 1,000 people on the.
Oh, okay.
On
So
that
they're
list.
not.
That's not
like the,
no. But the U.S. Marshals were looking for me, and anyway, they let me go. But Becky and I got into a huge argument because Becky, when I was driving to the police station, she was calling me over and over again. I called her and I explained to her I had to go to the police station. I told her what happened. She's freaking out, telling me not to go in the bank, not to go to the police station. Don't go to the police station. And I was like, look, the worst that will happen is they'll arrest me as Gary Sullivan. Because I have an ID, they won't run my prints right away. And you have to think this is 20 years ago. So the APHIS system back then, if they only ran your prints back then, if your identity was in question. My identity is not in question. I have a driver's license issued by the state DMV. Right. The officer has already said he ran me through APHIS because the guy from Wachovia was telling him, it's a fake ID. It's a fake ID. And he goes, it's not a fake ID. It's a South Carolina ID. I've already run him through APHIS. This is Gary Sullivan. So there's no question. So I was telling her, look, the worst that will happen is I'll get arrested as Gary Sullivan. You can get me out on bond. Go get a fucking lawyer, give him the money, get me out on bond. Like what are they going to do? If they give me bond, like at first I didn't think they knew about all the banks. So I was like, they only know about a few 100,000 that I pulled out. And what are they going to do? Even if they gave me bond for 200,000, we've got 200,000. You can go pay somebody 20 grand to get me out on bond. So, but when I'm telling her that, she goes, I'm not coming to get you. I'm not getting you a lawyer. I'm not getting you out on bond.
How come?
She's sitting on like $600,000. She goes like, I'm not going to risk everything I have. She goes, don't go to the police station. But I had no choice but to go to the police station. There's a cop behind me and the detective's in front of me. Like, where am I going to go? I'm not going to outrace. I'm not a race car driver. So I go there and he lets me go. So, but by the time I get back on the phone, I'm furious. We're yelling and screaming at each other. I end up going, because by this point she had relocated to Texas, to Houston. So I go to Houston, get into a huge argument with her. I leave her with $500,000 and I take $100,000. That's a whole nother thing, bro. That's a whole nother argument. Anyway, it just works out that way, which she had a powerful argument that basically like she had to live the rest of her life on this money. And that she's like, you'll turn around, you'll go steal $1 million. That's not going to be nothing for you. And so I was like,
there.
Yeah. And keep in mind, I had left like $700,000-800,000 in the bank.
Oh,
there's
so
still
you had more.
No, I didn't have any more. That money's tainted. They know about that money. But I'm saying like we had just borrowed $1.3 million in one scam. We $400,000 2 months earlier.
It goes quick.
Sorry, what?
It went quick. A lot of that money.
Yeah, we're blowing. We're buying cars. We're getting condos. We're buying furniture. You go spend $30,000, $40,000 on furniture. Like we're living well, we're traveling, we're going to Jamaica, Mexico, Bermuda. We're traveling all over the place. And I've got like a bunch of passports at this point, in people's names. Like I've got the passports, I've got legitimate stuff. And listen, I get tickets and pulled over and get a traffic ticket and in some, like, I'm not concerned. I'm driving a car in this guy's name. I got a driver's license in his name. I got full coverage insurance. I'm good.
Damn.
So
You did make sure to have everything in order, I suppose.
Right.
And
So
your ass was covered.
right. So what happens is I end up getting into an argument with her, grabbing some money, going back to Charlotte, North Carolina, to pick up my car. So I go there back to Charlotte to get my car. I get my vehicle. I stop to get some coffee across the street from my apartment complex. And two of the people from my apartment complex were there. Like they were in there getting coffee and they see me and they're like, holy shit. One of them races out the back of the Starbucks. It's weird, right? It was just, they were looked at me weird and they were like whispering. And I thought it was because it's like the 5th or 6th or something. And I thought, well, I hadn't paid my rent.
Mm-hmm.
Because why am I going to pay my rent? I'm leaving. I just drove all the way to Texas and back, right? So I'm vacating this place. And so what happened was the U.S. Marshals were actually at the apartment complex. So they'd just been questioned. So they run over there. They go to the people. They're like, oh my God, he's next door. He's next door. He's across the street at the Starbucks. Well, by this point, I've got my coffee. I walk outside. I get in my car, start my car. And the Starbucks, the other apartment employee walks outside and sees me. He's got like a handful of fucking coffee and he's holding like one of those foam trays and so all of a sudden he starts screaming, he's right there, he's right here. And I look around, 2 guys running towards the back of my car, and I just punch it and fucking haul ass down the street, which sounds very exciting, but the truth, there was no traffic and I'd already cleared, like I'm already pulling out practically. So it wasn't that big, but it does sound exciting. Right. But, so
were you on a high-speed chase or
no,
anything
they were
like
on
that?
foot. They were on foot.
No,
There's
damn.
no fucking chase. Like they're on foot.
Nothing. They got
I
you
punch
pretty
it and I'm
quick.
gone.
Oh,
I drive about a mile down the road and I see a bunch of homeless guys and I pull the car over and I go survey them. Because I had no IDs or anything. I had no more identities because I left them all in Texas with this psycho chick. So I survey those guys. I then go to Nashville. I end up getting an ID in the name Joseph Marion Carter Jr. And so everybody called me Carter. So I get a driver's license in that name. I actually drove that car I was driving. I drove that car all the way back to Charlotte, left it at Charlotte International Airport, long-term parking, got on a plane, flew back to Nashville because I didn't want him to find it. And, like I don't want to burn the car. I'm not a burn the car kind of guy. So, I didn't know what to do with it. Like, what am I going to do with this? You know what? I'm going to bring it somewhere where they can find it and they'll think I'm still there. So that's what I did. And so I drove that. I end up, I go back to Nashville. I rent an apartment. And, I dated a bunch of chicks for like 6 months or something. After maybe 3-4 months, I'm bored. And so I was like, fuck this. I'm going to start flipping properties again. So, and I was doing the money is dwindling, right? Like it's getting down there. So I go owner finance 4 properties. I get 4 people to owner finance some properties for me in the name of a fake person. And I record the value of the properties higher.
Even more higher than before?
No, I bought those properties for about $65,000 a piece, and I recorded them around 210, 190. So the values jump 3 times. I make the whole value of the area jumps up 3-4 times. I refinance the properties, pull out fucking $300,000-$400,000. Then I start buying more properties, refinance those. Then I end up meeting this chick named Allison. Keep in mind, I've abandoned that one chick, Becky. I abandoned her in Houston. She ends up getting caught.
How did she get caught, or what was the situation?
Once she realized I wasn't coming back, because there'd been numerous times I'd packed my stuff and left. But I came back, right? Like she would always call me on the phone, please come back. I'm sorry. love you, or please don't do this. But this time when I left, I chucked the phone, so he had no way to call me. So I never got that phone call to feel bad for her and go back. So I just left her. Well, she bought a car. She already had an ID in Texas, right? So she's got an ID. She was living as Rebecca Sue Hickey. And I think everybody called her Becca. So because she had a whole group of friends, she was very personable. So she's got a bunch of friends. She starts working at a bar. She starts going to cosmetology school, or is it hair, whatever, for your hair?
Yeah, cosmetology, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called, yeah.
So she starts going to school. She ends up calling her mother several times, which is a mistake, because at one point she ends up telling her kind of like where she is. Not the address, just the city. And then another time she tells her that she's in, cosmetology school. So how hard is it? Her mom calls the Secret Service and says, listen, she's in Houston, Texas at some cosmetology school. Now, that's what the Secret Service told me. That's how they found her. Now, I've talked to her since I got out, and she said, no, I was working at a bar, and the Secret Service office was a couple blocks away, or I think she said the U.S. Marshal office was a couple blocks away, because it was in downtown, and one of the marshals walking in recognized me. I believe what the Secret Service told me.
Yeah.
So, because they also arrested her in the cosmetology school. Like, she's in class one day, cutting hair on a wig. And all of a sudden they come in. She's like, they come in from like two different doors with the guns drawn. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. She's like, everybody drops down, and she's sitting there like, what the fuck? She's like, I got on the ground. They handcuffed me. And but I was in Nashville and borrowing money. I had a girlfriend at that time. I met this chick, and we're living together. And there's a TV show called Dateline that was coming out. And keep in mind, by this point, there's been 50 newspaper articles on me. Everybody I know in Florida they've already spoken with the police, and they've cooperated, so I'm done there. The FBI, Secret Service, they're looking for me. And I wasn't that worried, because I'd been in like Fortune magazine and Bloomberg Business Week. They'd done a couple articles. So I wasn't worried. But when Dateline was going to come out, I was thinking, well, Dateline's going to be everywhere. And Dateline, the worst thing about Dateline is, like, you could be on Dateline. Let's say you're one night, they do Dateline. Mm-hmm. You jump in your car, and when it's playing, you're gone. You're just driving. And the next day you drive to, you stay in a motel for a couple of days, go to some resort, stay in a resort for a couple of days. And then a week later, you start somewhere fresh. You have a new ID. I always had fresh IDs, right? So you just start with, you got about $500,000 in cash and a new ID, and you just start somewhere else. That's not hard to do. My problem was, once I get to that place, that 6 months from now, they're going to re-air that Dateline. And in a year from now, they're going to re-air it again. And so I reestablished my life somewhere. And I've got 5 houses or 20 houses or a bunch of apartment complexes or whatever I'm doing. And one day, some guy who works at Starbucks, the barista at Starbucks is at home watching TV, and he's like, hey, that guy comes into the Starbucks every day. He makes a phone call. I walk in the next day, boom, I get arrested. So you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
yeah.
So I was concerned. So I decided I was going to go to Australia.
Oh shit, go out of the country, huh?
Yeah. So and I'd been out of the country. Like, I traveled a bunch on, the passports and stuff, but I never really stayed anywhere, right? Like, I stayed in the US. So I was like, I'm gonna just go to Australia. And go to Australia, start over. Because at that time, Australia, if you showed up with like a couple $100,000 in a business plan, they'd allow you to stay there as a permanent resident alien. You were able to buy real estate. You can drive, you can buy real estate. They give you a driver's license as a permanent resident alien, but you could open a business, but you can't take a job. You can't work there.
Really?
Yeah, you can't get a job there, but you can open a business and hire Aussies.
Damn.
So
it was kind of simple. More welcoming than trying to go into the US and shit like that, like becoming a citizen there, you know?
Well, they were trying to grow their population. The population in Australia at that time had kind of become stagnant.
Mhm.
And their plan was to try and grow it by 2 or 3% a year for the next so many years to try and, get it up and going. And so I was like, so they're ready to bring people in. So I'm thinking, hey, Australia. So the chick and I was dating, Amanda, we were going to go to Australia, but we were also getting cash, right?
Mhm.
So the only way to do it, right, is you pull cash out of the bank. Once you've got the cash out, you open a couple corporate accounts, and then you start putting money back into the bank. Now it's clear, right? It's laundered. Now I can get a cashier's check, or I can wire that money out of the country. But I can't do it. I can't just transfer the money out of this name to this corporate account, because when they eventually figure out, hey, this guy Joseph Carter, has these bank accounts. Oh, look, he transferred money to this corporate account. Oh, look, it was transferred to Australia. He's in Australia.
Right. They
So
put it together.
right. I have to get it out in cash so I can reinsert it back into the bank. And that's not that difficult to do. But if you do it slowly and you do the right thing, like there's ways to do it through real estate. You buy real estate and then sell it. You buy real estate in that corporate name, and then resell now I've got it cleared. There's lots of ways to do it. So I was in the process of doing that. One of the things I was doing was just having people cash checks. So we're giving construction workers that are building places for us. I'm still doing kind of development. So I give this guy this much, right? Hey, cash this $7,000. I'll give you $700. Give me the rest of it. Like that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay. I get you.
Well, Amanda gave several checks to this chick that was a friend of hers or a friend of ours to cash checks. That sparked a conversation like, what are you doing? Why do you need $30,000? And what are you guys doing? And so Amanda tells her, we're leaving the country. His name is not Joseph Carter. His name's Matt Cox. He's wanted. And Dateline is coming out. So
Wow.
you can imagine. So she calls the Secret Service, and then one day when I come home, Secret Service arrests me.
So did your girlfriend at the time tell you that she told her friend any of that? Like, or
No,
was she
she in a letter she told me. She didn't tell me at the time, but in a letter she said, because the newspapers all said that a babysitter recognized me. So the babysitter was Amanda's friend, and her mother also babysat. And her mother is the one that talked to the newspaper. She said that she had looked. She's like, I looked in his eyes and I could see deception. And so I started searching, and eventually I went to the Secret Service's website and I saw that he was wanted by the Secret Service. Like that's absolutely, none of that's true. Like that's the dumbest thing ever. So what really happened was later Amanda explained to me in a letter that she had told Trina, and Trina had turned me in.
Oh, okay.
Our
Well, that
friend
makes more sense, right? I mean,
right, but Trina obviously didn't want to say that. So she had her mother say,
all
I
that
turned him. I called.
and
Like, because she didn't want to tell Amanda, I turned your boyfriend in.
right, because they were somewhat friends or
No,
whatnot.
they were very good friends. They were and keep in mind, she in her mind, she's still thinking we're friends. We're going to be friends. They'll pick him up and I'll be able to say, I didn't know anything about it. And we'll still be friends. Not realizing, like, as soon as I go, like, Amanda's in trouble.
Yeah, she was just as much involved, I suppose, too. She had her involvement, right?
She had some involvement. And the first thing Amanda does is pack up her bags, sell everything she's got, all the properties, because the properties are all in her name. Sell everything she could sell and move back to Florida. And she's done with Trina. Like, I'm done. Like, she already knows, look, I told you. And a week later they arrest him. I know. Right. Oh no, my mom. Fuck you. I told you. You're the one that called. She's not stupid. So anyway, I end up getting arrested. I ended up getting arrested. I get, I get sentenced. I get 26 years in prison.
How long was your trial? Like, was it quite
trial?
long?
You don't go to trial. You're getting when you're guilty.
Oh well, no. So you got nothing at all. Like
I pled guilty. I cooperated. I cooperated. But my cooperation did not lead to anybody being arrested because they'd already cooperated against me. And so I can't really tell them anything. I mean, it could have eventually led to arrest, right? But
Mhm.
by the time I'm arrested and a year later I'm sentenced, so I'm arrested in 2006, I'm sentenced in 2007, a year later.
Mm.
And then by the time they start really doing the investigation in 2008, the entire financial system is collapsing, the 2008 financial crisis.
Right.
So who do we go after? These are 4 and 5 year old crimes, or do we go after banks that are currently going in or imploding for fraud because of fraud? So
Mhm.
they don't really look into it that much, and they never really arrest anybody. So I'm stuck with 26 years. Eventually, I end up. I do. They asked me to be interviewed by American Greed for a
Mhm. What
TV
is that
show.
like? Oh, TV show. Okay.
Yeah, it's like American Greed is like Dateline.
Okay.
So I'm interviewed by a Dateline and American Greed, and and I, and the so the I don't want to give you too long of a story. So the short version is I also ended up so that the government asked me to be interviewed by Dateline and American Greed, and then once I was locked up for like a couple of years, 2-3 years, and they told me we want you to be interviewed and we'll cut your sentence for it. But then once I did it, they wouldn't cut my sentence. They were like, no, it's not enough. So then what?
I was gonna say, like, so they just went back on their word, or like, why? How come they didn't want to go through with it, with giving you a shorter sentence?
Because they're lying pieces of garbage. It's the government.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
They've got you. You're going to do anything to get out of prison. So if they
right.
say, "Oh, we want you to do this," you go, oh, "Okay," and then they go, "Ah, yeah, we changed our mind. Fuck you." And then a year later, they're like, "Oh, wait, we need you to do something else." What am I going to say? "Fuck you. I'll just do my 26 years."
No.
The fuck I am. What do you want me
Right.
to do? So I do that. Then a couple of years later, they say, "Listen, we want you to write an ethics and fraud course." Because the mortgage brokers in the United States have to take like 9 hours of ethics and fraud. No, 9 hours of continuing education courses.
Mhm.
3 hours is on ethics and fraud. So I end up writing a course that's used to teach mortgage brokers throughout the country.
Wow.
And they said, "We'll reduce your sentence for it." And I said, "Yeah, but you said that last time." They said, "No, trust me. We're doing something. Yeah, we're gonna do it." So I do it, and they say, "Yeah, it's just not enough."
Again.
Again.
Damn.
So by this point, I've done like 6 years, 7 years. So I go to a jailhouse lawyer in prison and I get him to file what's called a 2255. He files it. We fight the government for the next 6 months and they eventually reduce my sentence by 7 years. So that's the
Wow.
short version.
Wow.
I get back. So now I've done like 7 years. I still have like 8, 9 years to go. So it's like, okay, so I get back and I'm walking around the compound with a guy named Ron Wilson. Ron Wilson was a Ponzi schemer. He had run a Ponzi scheme. He'd lost like $57 million of like pensioners and churches and shit. They borrowed money from churches and pension funds and stuff and retirees. And he just blown the money. He
Jeez.
just spent it on stuff. So, and he'd been doing it for like 10 years or something. So when he ends up getting like 19 and a half years, right?
Mhm.
But he was cooperating against the people in his case. So we're walking around the compound and he ends up confiding in me that he's hidden Ponzi scheme money. And he kept telling me like they're never going to cut my sentence. And I was like, why? They think I hid Ponzi scheme money. I go, well, you didn't. Like he actually dug up like $6 million and gave it to him.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, you didn't, so don't worry about it. And he was like, well, you don't understand. Oh, okay. So one day he ends up, he kept saying it. I was like, why do you keep saying this? And he goes, can I trust you? And I went, probably not. And he goes, he said, I did hide some money. He said, I gave my wife, my ex, which is now his ex, it was about to be his ex-wife. They were going through a divorce because she found out he was cheating on her. So he said, I gave her like 150,000 and I gave my brother like 30,000. He said, I'm afraid that my wife will turn in the money just to make sure that I can't get any time off my sentence, because he's cooperating to get his sentence knocked off.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's not going to happen, because she's not going to do that, because she'd get charged for hiding the money. It's obstruction of justice. And they'd already asked her if she had the money. She said, no, I don't have any money. I don't know nothing. So I said, she's not going to do that. He's, oh, you don't know her. She's crazy. She'll burn the fucking house down around you, And I was like, okay, well, so I ended up talking to my lawyer like a month later. Like, I didn't even get on the phone and call my lawyer, because I thought they didn't want to give me anything the first time. They're not going to give me anything for this. So I didn't even say anything. And like a month later, I had written a memoir, and I wanted to add some stuff in that was said at my resentencing when I got the time knocked off. I wanted to add some lines in from what the judge said. And so I asked her to send me my transcripts. And she was like, oh, okay. She was, everything else, what else is going on? She was, I'll send them to you. What else is going on? And I was like, oh, nothing. Like, she was, nothing else going on in there? What, nothing happening? And I went, like, this woman never wanted to talk to me. And it's just weird that she said it. And I went, you know what? I said, listen, something happened the other day. This guy listen to what this guy said. I told her. She goes, well, let me check it out, and I'll get back with you. I said, okay. So like a week later, a correctional officer comes up to me and goes, Cox. And I go, yeah. He goes, you got to go to the SIS. So it's their internal security.
Mm-hmm.
It's special investigative services. So I go and I go, what's going on? And they put me on the phone with a Secret Service agent. And the guy goes, hey, I understand that you've hidden, where Ron Wilson has hidden Ponzi scheme money. I said, yeah. I said, I want something in writing. And I said, I'll try and get you something in writing. So the guy ends up getting me something in writing. It doesn't say much. It says like they'll consider giving me something if I can help recover money. So I tell them what happened. They go question the wife and the brother. They give up the money immediately, but it wasn't like $150,000. It was like $500,000. They re-indict Wilson. So Wilson, and I know he's being re-indicted. So I know all this is happening because the Secret Service is emailing me. So one day I'm sitting there and Wilson sees me across the compound. He goes, Cox. And I'm like, oh, hey, like I'm waiting. Like, I don't know what he knows. I don't think he knows I'm involved. I'm pretty sure. Like if he did, he'd tell everybody and I might be in trouble. But I was like, yeah, what's up? He's like, they indicted me. I'm like, no. For what? They found the money. No. And he's like, yeah, he said, yeah, my wife came in, she gave him 350,000 and my brother gave her 150. And I go, he goes, yeah, they got $500,000. I go, $500,000. I go, you said it was like 150,000. And he goes, well, I didn't think I could trust you. And I was like, Ron, you can't trust me. That hurts. So wow. A week or two, about 2 weeks later, they put him on what's called the pack out on basically they're shipping him list. They ship him back to South Carolina. He gets 6 more months added to his sentence for obstruction of justice. And his ex-wife, and his brother get like community service. They get like 100 hours community service. Like that's it. And they get charged with obstruction of justice, community service. And their sentence was community service. So they didn't do any time. He got 6 more months. So he went from 19 and a half to 20.
So they didn't get much.
No, he
didn't. What about you? What'd you get?
Well, they said they considered what I did and it wasn't enough for a sentence reduction. So they didn't want to give me anything. So we had to file another 2255, go back in front of the court, and eventually we got them to give me 5 years off my sentence. So I ended up with 7 plus 5. That's 12 years off. By the time that happened, I basically was ready to be put in for a halfway house. And a year later, I go to a halfway house. What's funny is that Wilson, about a year after that, Wilson, who had only done like 8 years of a 20-year sentence, COVID came along, and because he was in his 60s, they moved him home. So he's not even in prison. He didn't do any of the time. He didn't do any of the time I got him.
No, nothing. Wow.
So, not that I care.
You ever see him out on the street or anything, or he ever try to contact you or anything like that?
I can't contact him because I'm on federal probation.
Yeah.
But in 3 months from now, I'm off federal probation, and I'm going to call him.
Really? What are you going to tell
him? Like, bro, what's up?
No.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, he actually sent word back through a guy that told to tell me he wasn't upset. He said, I would have done the same thing, and I hope you get as much time off as possible.
Really? So he wasn't pissed.
He wasn't
Damn.
pissed because I just think he wasn't pissed because, first of all, he's already cooperating against people.
That's true.
So,
That's
if you're saying, you fucking snitch piece of shit, you're a
That's true.
snitch piece of shit. I'm just better than you. Like, I'm just faster at it. So, I think he'll actually probably have a conversation with me.
Probably.
Or he may just say, fuck you, don't call me again. But that's why I can't be on federal probation when I do it, because they could call my probation officer and get me violated.
That'd be terrible.
Right. I don't want to do that.
So you got your sentence basically cut in half eventually.
Yeah, I did
Right.
13 years. On 26 years, I did 13.
Wow. And during that time, you just were doing a lot of writing, right?
Yeah, I wrote a bunch of true crime books. I optioned the life rights for several guys. I got a couple guys into Rolling Stone magazine.
That's dope.
I got some book deals. And then when I got out, I started optioning. I had written like 20 something stories. And so I started optioning those stories when I got out. And that's what I've been doing that. And I started a YouTube channel.
Damn. So how many years you been out then?
Almost 5. In 3 more months, it'll be 5 years. Well, not 3 more months. It is 3 more months. So it's in July. It'll be exactly 5 years I've been on probation.
So it's not even that long. I mean, really, like you think about it, like has it felt those 5 years felt like a lifetime ago since you've been out, like not doing what you used to do?
No, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You know what I'm saying? So like sometimes I feel like, wow, like I just got out of prison. And then other times I feel like, I've been out a while.
Oh yeah,
5
you've done
years.
a lot.
Yeah. Like
Since
I've done
you've
a
been
lot.
out.
In the last 5 years, I've started from like absolutely nothing to I was always disappointed in that because I actually expected to get out of prison with $0. When you get out, they give you a little, like a debit card. So you have an account, right? You have your inmate commissary account.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, if you have any money left on your account, then they put it on your debit card. So guys will walk out with $50, $100, whatever. And I was planning on getting out with nothing. Like I remember joking with a couple of guys. I said, bro, when I get out, I'm going to have $1.50 on my debit card. And they charge you $3 to use the card. I was like, I won't even be able to get my $1.50. So I'm kind of laughing about it. And my one buddy was like, well, you're going to need some money. I was like, nah, I'm going to start with nothing. I'm going to start with nothing in the halfway house. And I said, I'm going to get a job working at McDonald's and, whatever. I'm going to figure it out. And he was like, huh. So like the day before, 2 days before I'm getting out, I go to get on the computer, right? And somebody deposited $400 on my computer, in my account. And so I went to my buddy and I go, bro, did you just put $400 on my account? He said, yeah. I said, bro, why'd you do that? And I said, you didn't have to do that. And he said, yeah, I know I know the cutesy little thing about getting out with no money, because I know you thought that was going to be cute. And I know you wanted to do that, but he was, bro, he'd been in prison and out of prison a few times. He said, you're going to need some shit. He said, I know you're getting out with your 2 pair of sweatpants and 4 t-shirts. And he said, that's not going to be enough. He said, you're going to need some shit. He said, this will help you. And, so, which was, like, I just was like fucking in shock. Right. And, luckily he did that. So, I would have liked to have started with nothing. I would have been happy about it, but he's right. It was easier. It was easier to start with that.
That's I see what you mean. And like with him doing that, you really got to see the good in guys. There was some good in guys that were in prison, and then of course that weren't, and all that kind of shit. I mean, you were in there for 13 years. You met all kinds of different characters, but
yeah, listen, some of the best people I've met in my entire life, I met in prison.
Sounds like it, man. I mean, really, like this guy right here, he put $400 on you, just weren't even expecting it at all, man. And like, I mean, you guys were all in there for whatever reason, whatever they were all there for. But I've interviewed a lot of ex guys that were involved with crime and stuff, and they say the same thing, man. And it's good to see them come out and try to do something for themselves and build a name. And you're a damn good story of that because of the, your YouTube channel you've done and all the books and all the interviews and stuff you've done. I mean, you've done a lot of cool things, man. And just to span to 5 years and really turned it around. So like
I'm trying.
you are, you
Trying.
do four shows a week now, right?
Yeah.
That's impressive, man. That's a lot. That takes a lot of work, man. But you've worked enough to get into this position where you can do that. And I'm glad you're doing that, man. That's awesome. And I hope you continue to do it and whatever else you can have planned. I mean, what would you like to do now?
I mean, I want to keep just doing the YouTube thing. Like when I get off probation, I might start flipping houses or do something. I don't know. I mean, but I mean, let's face it, the YouTube thing alone it's working and it pays all my bills. And so I'm thrilled with the way it's going. And I have, keep in mind, I have book sales. Like my book sells. I have 7 true crime books, and I've optioned several guys' life stories, and I'm waiting to see if I can get some documentaries made. But if nothing happens and and YouTube just continues, and plus like the book sales and stuff, and I do speaking engagements and stuff, like if those things just continue the way they are, like I'm doing great.
Right. No, I mean, that's the position I want to get into, man. So I'm glad you were able to come on and share your story and even help me out with my channel and help me try to give me some advice because I do need that, man, especially from someone in a higher position because I could really learn a lot and just little things like this. And for the people watching, they can see the screens in full mode today because, you gave me another tip of advice. So it's like, why do you have it so small?
Better.
Yeah, it is. I know. Sometimes I just need that, just to rethink things, just have someone from the outside looking in and be like, why the fuck are you doing that like that? And so you helped me with that. And so I appreciate that, man. Matthew, I mean, do we have anything else that you think we need to cover or throw in here with this? I mean,
No, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll put, of course, your channel in the video description. And do you have like a certain website where all your books are and stuff? Do you have your own website?
They're available on Amazon. Like my
Okay.
memoir is called Shark in the Housing Pool. And if
Yeah.
you go to that, it's going to show you all the other books. Like they're all kind of, it's going to show you all these. There's a bunch of books there. So yeah, Amazon, Matt Cox books, The problem is there is another guy named Matt Cox.
Uh-oh.
I do true crime. He does fiction. And there's just there's no way to confuse the two of us.
No way. I mean, you have your true crime and then the nonfiction. So yeah, everybody check out Matt, man. I'm glad that we were able to connect and he's another good podcaster out here doing some good stuff and interviewing a lot of former criminals, gangsters, a couple mob guys, and just all around a lot of cool stories. So thanks, Matt.
No problem.
What a story we had today. It's crazy how he scammed millions. He had so many different scams he got away with for a long time. I'm glad that he left that life behind and is now using his smart brain for good use. Since Matthew's been free, he's been doing a lot of great things. He's got a YouTube channel, he's written many books, and he's doing a lot of great speaking engagements. If he could leave the criminal life behind after being so deeply involved, anyone can. Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this interview with Matthew. Please share it with anyone that you think will enjoy this type of content. Also, please be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interviews like this. At the end of this video, a playlist will pop up of all the other Invest in Yourself podcast interviews I've done. And the last thing that I'll bring up is that every Sunday I go on and do a live show with the guests that I bring on. So I hope I see you there this Sunday and you can ask me and the guests some questions. And thank you again so much for watching. And of course, we'll see you on the next one.